from the BoD Studios, plural studios. It is Playin and Slayin, episode 80. We are now officially a geriatric, an octogenarian, or what is the?
I think that's right. I'll go with that. We'll go with it.
Yeah, 80 episodes, and in true 80th anniversary fashion, Troy and I are here to hold down the fort over the summer months, and soon to arrive babies and busy schedules, but we thought, why not? So here we are.
Yeah, here we are. I'm glad we could do this, Ty. This is it's always good to get to chat. Well, some people would say maybe the two of us do talk too much anyway, and that's the other guys are just protesting, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they were here, they could share their opinion, but they're not, so they don't get to. That's how that works. However, Troy, when you're Playin and Slayin, it is important to stay hydrated. So what are you hydrating with this evening?
All right. You guys are I have not even cracked it open. I pulled out from the back of the fridge, Sun King Brewery, Genevieve. I'm going through, I kind of have a couple of old Gen Con beers that it's about time for them to get drunk. Yeah. So, and I just got my Gen Con. I am probably getting, Sarah and I still have the plan to show up at Gen Con this year, which should be an interesting adventure. And we just picked up our badges today. I got the notice that you have to sign for it. Like they're so worried about people like that. It came yesterday, but nobody was home. And so there was a little thing. And then, so end of the day, I was like, Sarah, let's go to the post office and go pick up our things. So this is now you're going to help me. I don't know what year this was.
Genevieve, is that like 2 years ago?
I think this was at least 2 years ago. And it might, and this is the Belgian style amber ale, really good. This is, I don't know if this is probably my second favorite one.
Still
I think
good.
Even aged a little bit. Yeah, not good. I think it's almost got more of the little fruitiness to it than as it's aged a little bit. So
nice. Well, I saw this was episode 80, Troy, so I decided to go for an on theme Pliny the Elder. So this is very, very hard to find around our neck of the woods, but Matt brought me one at Adepticon from out west, and it's a Russian River Brewing Company, and it is very good. I probably kept it in the fridge a little bit longer than I should have, because they say don't age it, drink it fresh, but it's still very good. Yep. And
so we're both doing a little bit overaged beers, but they're still good, and we'll count them
out of the Holy Havoc.
Look at that
glassware. So a lot of callbacks for this special 80th episode, which is crazy that we've sat down and recorded nonsense 80 times and are still doing it. So
yeah, and I have a little story. So I was at a 2-year-old birthday party for my niece's 2-year-old on 2 days ago. And her husband is somewhat of a little bit of a gamer. But he did not know that we talk and whatever, but I'm not the one who's going to be like, oh yeah, I have a podcast, right? That's not usually what I'm. But Kayla, my niece, told him that, oh yeah, don't you know that Troy has the podcast? And so he, at the towards the end of the party, we kind of got talking, and he's like, I've been listening to you every single day. So he basically started at 1.
Yeah.
And has been working his way through. So hi, Matt, calling out to Matt.
Oh, fantastic.
When you get here the rate he's going, he said he's going through almost an episode a day. And he was in the 60s. So probably sometime in August, he'll be hearing this, and he'll be caught up. So
fantastic.
It was it was funny. And and then we ended up talking, and he actually, as for the 80, it was funny because to him, a lot of stuff is new. So he was talking about things that he had heard in episodes from
Yeah.
from years ago. He was like, I remember the first time when Bryce, like all of a sudden Bryce joins and he's an intern, like, and that was funny.
Oh,
So
yeah.
very kind of timely as we kind of hit the 80 here, and for Matt to take me through kind of the archives as he's working his way through, and it was great. So so one more, we at least have one listener. We know
Hey,
that's
awesome.
counting for those downloads I see every week here. So
Yeah. Is he local? Are they kind of local?
yeah, he's local. He's New
Yeah.
Berlin, kind of Berlin area. So
where's his established gaming located?
So he's got like, I was calling it like a mini BoD. So he's got
Okay.
an kind of a finished basement. They do have, he has like a bar.
Yeah.
They have a little older house, so not huge, but, and then he's got one corner, kind of like you. He's got his computer. Also, him and his brother also do a lot of video gaming stuff. So he's got, his corner with the computer, and then he has the like a mini Calyx. So he has kind of the one Calyx of kind of the 3x3 that he's got starting to go with
nice.
some of the games in there. So some good, we've walked through that Spirit Island, Clank, some Catan in there. He's got some good classics in there. So it was good. Yeah,
Excellent.
it was fun.
Very cool. Well, let's get into it here shortly and talk through our banter.
For more shows like this, check out the Goonhammer Media Network. More info at media.goonhammer.com.
All right, Troy. So what are we playing in this summer of gaming?
We got together for Frosthaven, not as much as we have been, because somebody's baseball schedule. I don't know how that works, but we did
vacations
and I can't. I'll have to take some blame because June I had a vacation in the beginning, in the middle, and Josh had vacation, and we kind of like squeezed in. Oh, we think here's a weekend we can jump into that. So we did get in the Frosthaven. Keep going. We're starting to kind of, I feel like we're getting some momentum there. We've had some characters starting to get retired. You're on what? You just retired third character?
Well,
like
retired
that?
my second. On my third character now with Shackles. Haven't had a chance to play it yet, but
yeah, we finally got Josh to retire. John's working through. He's our new tank character, right? I can't remember exactly what he's got, but so it's interesting, right? If we change it up. Stories we're starting to work through more of the quests, and some of the story stuff's open up. We made our way through our first winter, working our way through second summer. So we're getting it down.
We're marching relentlessly forward. And then when we didn't play Frosthaven, because one time Josh couldn't make it, we got together with John and we busted out Oathsworn. Since last we played, it had been a long time, but we did battle with Mystery Box 4.
We won't give too many spoilers. That it was a blast. I love that game, man. I love that game. That was
the painted terrain and the painted monsters. All looks really cool once the battle half of the game comes out too. We actually got to see a new mechanic because we were exploring through the Deepwood, which has this kind of card. You lay down cards as the map and choose your path, and a little bit different than the story mode. Other times where you have the city map and you're kind of moving around location to location. So it's interesting to see that aspect, that some adventures take place within the Deepwood, and others are within the cities.
Like a city. Yeah, good. And I know you had painted some of the terrain, but I don't know, was this the first one? Or was this the first one where we had like more of the terrain out, right? Because we have...
Yeah, we had the houses, the walls, the trees. It was the first time we used the painted like walls and the houses, I think.
Yeah, which even makes it even more. So
yeah. Made for a fun time.
I think we got to paint characters, Ty. Well,
I know.
If you trust, you need to distrust us. I'll paint my guy.
Yeah, no, I totally should just hand them out and say go nuts. I don't know what it is. I just can't stay on a project. We'll maybe talk about that in the hobby segment. A lot of distractions. Also, like, I mean, we jokingly, but Landon's baseball is it's like a full-time job between April 15th and July 15th for me. Those 3 months are like, these kids play something like 40, 45 games of baseball. And if we're not at a tournament, we're practicing. It's, in 90 days, they play 42 games of baseball, which is pretty crazy for 12-year-old kids.
Right. They're like, 11, 12-year-old kids. That's
and
great
especially
stuff.
since most of it's May and June. Like April was kind of like one tournament, and but yeah, it's a lot. But that wraps up here in a few weeks, and then maybe we'll not be too tired or too busy to get back to the hobby table.
Cool. So I'll run through. I did
what have
couple
you
things. So we were on one of my vacations. Was up in Door County and at the Nashery in downtown Surgeon Bay there. And they always, and Sarah knows, it's funny, like she won't play me at home very often, but Pokemon Saturday when we're up there by grandma, we're always over at the Nashery, and she just likes to play other people. I don't know what that means. She doesn't like to play me as much. That's kind of boring. I can always play my dad, but if she can play strangers, that's her thing. Like, so she's definitely the social part of it. So she played a couple games. I don't know if they actually play, because she does like I think they talk more than they play. And then at some point they just go, all right. And when they switch, right. So I did play, and it was funny. We were there we ran into a couple of her schoolmates, actually twin boys who are in her same school, that their grandparents also live up there.
Oh,
and it was like we
cool.
were up there on, because we were up there all week. And so we happened to, and we went in there on Tuesday, and all of a sudden, I don't remember why we poked in there. We were downtown, we poked in Nashery, and then all of a sudden we hear Sarah, and one of the boys recognized, saw her, and we knew they were big players. They had their binders with them, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna be back here on Saturday. You're gonna be back here on Saturday." So they had all their plans to come back. So I did get a game in. I was victorious.
Oh, all right.
Against another 11-year-old
kid. Way to be, Troy.
But I'm sure he's played 10 times the amount of Pokemon that I had. So I was probably the underdog. It was not I just paid, pre-constructed deck. I wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. And he didn't cry. We were all good. So that's my Pokemon stuff, getting warmed up. Like I said, that might be, we might have a pretty heavy Gen Con Pokemon if Sarah and I actually end up down there doing that stuff. And then when we had one of the digital Saturday night Weiss Brothers games, we broke out. I can't remember what we did. We were doing some BoDCon planning as Weiss Brother, as we were doing some stuff, and then we're like, oh, let's play something before we hang it up for the night. And we pulled out Seven Wonders Architects, which I've talked to before. Fun game. Love that in person as a real physical game, because the components are really good.
Yeah.
Again, I would say unlike, but more than regular, it has some Seven Wonders mechanics if you're trying to get kind of the resources, or you're military, or you have kind of science, and they're a little more player interaction because you're sharing decks. And so you're always that which is nice around some of that. But basically you construct there's I don't know, there's 7. I think there's 7 different parts of your wonder that you need to complete. And then whoever does that ends the game, total points, you're done. So it's not, again, probably 45 minutes at the most if you're even playing with 4. I think and you can play with 7. I think you can still play with 7. I think you end up, and you're playing with the people next to you. You're sharing decks on people on your left and right, around some of that too. So really like that game.
Cool.
A lot of fun. So we got that. Again, playing it digitally is awesome too, because there's no setup. And rock and roll it on Board Game Arena. Yeah. And helps you calculate, like you don't have to do all the crazy resource math in your head too. It's just like, oh, that works. So
cool. Maybe that's when we'll get out for a big group at BoDCon.
Yep. Yeah. Again, you're thinking about games that play a big amount of people, right? Yeah.
And then so one other thing, in an off Frosthaven night when John couldn't make it, we got together with Josh, and you brought Dwellings of Eldervale out,
Yep.
which you talked about before. But that was really fun to get to the table again. Every time I play it, I think it gets a little bit higher up in my list of why it's such a good game.
You can't see it. I was trying to show it. I think it's over there. It's over there. Yeah, it's just out of. Oh, maybe you can just see the part of the box way over there. All right. So that's yeah. It was calling to me. We were trying to figure out what game we were going to play that day, and I think I ran through a list of stuff, and I said, "And Dwellings is staring at me from the shelf," and Ty kind of immediately said, "Yes."
Yeah. I was like, "Let's go." Mine is still the one I bought at a weekender when I saw it up at Adventure Games in Oshkosh. It's still up in shrink wrap, sitting on top. I haven't unboxed it yet, but
yeah. And I have mine. It was fun to play with the real. I don't know if you thought I was a little more.
Yeah,
we had because I have all the
cool.
expansions. I keep blinging mine out on that, so we had the actual monster figures. We did not use the noise things for the monsters, but having the actual monsters is pretty.
And
cool.
the tokens too, the resources being the like wood was cool. Let's see. So then Nicole and I, over the last several months, have played through My Island. So we played My City, I think maybe last year, 2 years ago. And then Knizia released My Island, which is similar concept, but you're opening up an island and kind of exploring and tile placement. So we finished the 8th chapter. So 24 games in total, but finished it up. Calculated scores, and Nicole ended up edging me out by like 2 progress points when all the math and everything was done over all the games. It was super close, but really cool. Highly recommend, especially if you've played My City. It kind of, it changes enough that it feels like a very different game. But then since we were done with My Island, I'm like, I need to find another 2-player game. So I went to the game store, and I'd heard a lot about Sky Team coming out of Gen Con last year, which is a 2-player cooperative game in which you are a pilot and co-pilot trying to land a plane. So you have this really cool board where you place dice, but you roll your dice, and then you can't talk during placement. And it's really important how each of you place certain dice for what that does to like the axis of the plane. If you go too heavy one way, it tilts, and if you go too far, you crash. Or the dice you put on the engine, you total those dice, and if you're higher than a certain threshold, you go 2 spaces where you might collide into another planes because you have to use the radio to like clear traffic in front of you as you approach. So it's really neat how it works, and there's a lot of different runways and missions that they include. But we had to do 3 tries to kind of get our first landing at Montreal Trudeau Airport.
You don't get tries in the plane. What happens when you miss? Isn't that just game over? You have to pack it up. That's
permadeath. You never play it again if you crash your plane. But I highly recommend as a 2-player cooperative. Really fun, and like enough strategy that it's actually challenging, because during the you have a planning where you can talk about, okay, this turn we need to worry about these things, but you can't reference like specific numbers. Like if you get a 6, put it here. So it's like, well, we need to keep our speed kind of between these thresholds, or let's do speed first and then this, because you have 4 dice basically in your alternate placement. So really, really cool game. A lot of fun. And then for some reason, I decided that I needed to learn about how to fail. And I had a couple years ago when it released, I started Elden Ring. I played for like 5 hours, and I said, this is stupid. This game is too hard. Then the DLC just dropped like a couple weeks ago. So all these streamers, I'm seeing everybody playing it, and I'm like, okay, maybe I go back to it. And I started playing Elden Ring again. And it's still very hard, but I actually killed like one of the mini bosses and then another boss. I'm like, maybe I'm starting to get it. And then I came into a boss and got smoked. I'm like, this is terrible. And I'm texting Josh and Tom. We have a group text, and Josh said something like, yeah, it's so great though when you beat a boss after trying it like 40 or 50 times, that feeling of accomplishment. And Tom was like, yeah, and it's you're just trying to solve all these puzzles. And I said, guy, I think we're built different. Like, you guys enjoy this. I don't know if it's a neurodivergence thing. I don't know if it's like what it is, guys, but you're built differently to be able to die 40 or 50 times trying something before you just say, you know, this isn't for me.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of where I don't know where, because I never really got into those. I do enjoy like the story aspect, like, and if I'm playing one, I really want them. I really want to, like, I don't want to get stuck. I just want to get through the fight. It's almost like where I am with like a Marvel movie now. Like, I just zone out, or like a superhero movie. Like, I actually zone out through the fight scenes. Like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool, but can we just finish this? Tell me who wins and move the story ahead.
Yeah.
So, and I think I'm kind of the same way on video games. Like, I just want to play it on easy mode, get through the battles, because that's not that exciting for me. What's exciting is what's the consequence of the battle, or and how do we move ahead. And that's why I end up being a little bit of you know, sometimes for some games I'll just watch the playthrough video and I'll get enough out of it, right? That's like, because I'm like, I don't like have somebody else go through the struggles of, they're gonna get through the battle. I don't need to have that frustration of, if I'm just because I'm not good enough to win the battle. So
yeah, so we'll see how far I go as they both get the new Shadow of the Erd Tree DLC and start beating bosses and talking about how cool it is to die 50 times. But yeah, so a little bit of Elden Ring has been sprinkled in. Let's talk hobby. I'll start because mine's very short. I've been thinking about assembling conquest models that I bought an army of at Adepticon, basically motivated by the drip feed of information for AOS 4th edition and this download things on different days, and we're putting points behind the Warhammer Plus, the list building mechanism. And so as a form of protest, I'm going to assemble conquest models.
You know, I'm enough interested, if I can figure out how to not, again, maybe spend 1 million things. I mean, I'm already Warhammer Plus member, but I'm tempted to at least try Spearhead to see what it feels like. Again, I'm not going to do, but it would be another. I mean, I haven't played big 40K in a while either. It's usually, you know, smaller kill team, combat patrol, whatever. And that could be as far as I get into AOS, would be like, oh, I'll have a couple of spearheads floating around, and when we need to throw down, that's what you do. Again, I haven't done a whole lot with it, just been hearing decent things from people. And it's, again, similar. Sounds like they learned from Combat Patrol, like, hey, here's a way that we can actually get newer people into the hobby, kind of a all in, it makes sense from like a sales point of view.
Oh yeah.
And it's surprising. It sounds like they actually then figured out, like, how can we actually make this better? Sounds like it's a little more balanced. They actually thought about it harder, learning what they did from Combat Patrol. And then I wouldn't be surprised. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, my theory is that we'll get a Combat Patrol 2.0 for 40K based on what now they've learned from Spearhead. Yeah. And so I don't know. That's my thought. We'll see if that comes true or not. But I wouldn't, like, it feels like that will be their cyclical, again, because then in their typical marketing, they could make people rebuy all their Combat Patrols too.
Right. Just keep pulling the lever to print money.
Yep.
Keep the shareholders happy.
They are. That's it.
Yeah.
So I don't have, I have not picked up a brush. It's funny. I don't know if I even mentioned it last time. So I'm pointing over here because that's where my my mobile paint desk is, which is where I use it. There's a bunch of Zombicide minis that I had half painted for Adepticon. But I was going through and kind of putting a wash on them and basing, because we were going to play. Actually was going to do a work kind of with some people at work. We were doing a work event. That guy canceled. So that actually, I lost all my motivation to do that. But I have not even moved him off my table to do that. Somehow I then did, I think I talked about it, the Hero Quest board, which I'm pointing over here. is completely printed. It's all sitting there, all put together, not painted. We keep getting rain, sun.
Yeah.
Every time I'm like, I'm gonna go and prime like crazy, and then I'm like, oh, it's kind of wet and so
Humid. Yeah.
and then also I'm like, I'm really not. I don't know. I need to get it. If I get it primed, I'll be good, because then when I want to paint it, that it'll be ready to go, and I don't have that as a hindrance. But also like with BoDCon coming up and other things, I'm like, I'm really not going to get. I don't know. It's not like burning for me to get that stuff primed, but it's good. And I don't know if I ever did. I think I shared pictures of. So I printed all the board, and then Ian at Dragon's Rest, he basically, because the scale is a little bigger, he did all the interior stuff. So he did like the bookshelves and the torture chamber thing and the weapons rack. Oh my God, they're amazing. Like the pieces that I printed these things out, and even on my my filament printer, and I just did it at like 1.6 for people who know what that is. So a little finer. They came out amazing, and I'm actually more excited to paint those as much as I can the board. But yeah, you'll have to see like the detail he put in that is, I mean, the ones in the original box are really cool too. So I was actually a little bit of, I would say a little sad. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to use these, but then I printed the stuff that he provided, and I'm like, oh, this is like
these are
really,
great. Yeah,
really, really cool. And I might be able to do some fun stuff. Like he has it, even like there's a fireplace thing where, I might be able to put an LED in there and actually could have kind of, so you can go so far over that. He did, everything to go all over the top if you really want to. So that's exciting. So we'll have to actually, we'll have to actually play. Once I get that all kind of at least partly put together, I think it'd be fun to have the elf die a few times in Hero Quest.
Yeah, always the elf. Oh, let's talk Kickstarter. Before you go, I saw this guy on Instagram. I can't think of who he is, but it was a Kickstarter thing, and he said, Kickstarter in 2018, and he's looking at a game, and he goes, "Oh, all in $60," and then it's like 3 months later, and he's getting a box off his doorstep, and it arrives, and he's like, "Kickstarter now," and he's like, "All in $600." Something else, $200, shipping $100, and he buys, and then instead of 3 months later, it's 3 years later, and he goes and gets the box. And it's so funny because it made me think about pre-COVID Kickstarter and how games would post. You'd see them, you'd back them, and then maybe not 3 months, but later that year, you'd get it fulfilled. And then now we have like Bryce and his Awaken Realms saga of waiting 3 years for like games and other things, and the cost just going up and up and up and up. And it's like, what are we doing continuing to back games for the Kickstarter exclusives when we can just go wait 6 months and get it at retail? Like seeing like ISS Vanguard and seeing like all the overstock now of like various other games is pretty funny to me, that like there's all this false kind of sense of like scarcity with the Kickstarter exclusive, and then like letting things just get to retail. Like,
right. Yeah. And and a lot of and I can't remember what I was watching. It was some of the, it might've been, I don't know if I've been really enjoying, I think it's Ash. What's his podcast? He's, Ash, he's the ex GW guy, Canada. I'm gonna have to look we'll stall a little bit while I look on my YouTube. Make sure I give him credit for where he's
help, but I don't watch a ton of YouTube, so I'm if it's not baseball drills, it's or Vince's hobby cheating videos.
Wait, he's talking now. I gotta Gorilla. There we go. He's there we go. He's on there. Gorilla Miniatures. So he's as I look it up on there. So we got to hear Ash. I probably have to pay him now or something. But enjoying it. Like he's been interviewing a lot of, sorry to bring me all the way back on, like he'll interview some store owners and stuff like that, right? And they've just kind of talked about like, yeah, you get the kick. Like they're in the end, there's also really there is no retail like push for a lot of these games either. Like once they get through Kickstarter, they actually don't, because there's really no marketing going out. They don't have an Asmodee or somebody else behind them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they might hit a distributor or whatever, but there's no life for them once they hit retail. Like it's kind of, and you've kind of seen that, right? There are some games that they're going to live only on Kickstarter or crowdfunding, where that's GameFound. And that's I think like Oathsworn might be a little bit like that, even though it's a great game. Like you don't, the market, they're not really distributing through retail. They're just doing a second printing, and they do.
That's kind of, I mean, that's how Dwellings of Eldervale was.
Yep.
They did 3 or 4 printings.
Yep.
Crowd or pre-order or whatever. And you see the rare copy sitting on a shelf now. Like,
and those are good games, right? But
yeah,
I think that's a little bit, I don't want to say far and few, because there's a few good games out there, but there are a lot of just games that are, the little bit of what it is now, right? Which is a bunch of miniatures, right? A bunch of miniatures, some rules that may or may not actually be good, right? And I think unfortunately more often than not, right, it's the rules are not anything outstanding or just a rehash of something else. But people love their minis, so they're happy to wait 3 years and spend however many $100 to get everything they can. So,
and Bryce, we're not talking about you and your dragging game that you backed from Awakened Realms and Great Wall and Tainted Grail and whatever else. This is not victim blaming.
Yep. Nemesis is the only one that does that to me. So, and I am and even we talked about it. I mean, this is the last year or so where I've actually backed out or canceled, pledges like that. Like you said, that wasn't it. But now I won't go into people can go online if they want to see there was something, actually 2 of them, because I was talking to John and Ben the other day, was and I'm going to forget, now I'm going to forget that name. I have to go look down. The Rallycross game that company basically did. I was pledged. They got the whole thing done, and they ran out of money and could not ship the game. And so it basically it was held hostage at the warehouse by the distributor,
like customs or the port.
The distributor had it basically, and then basically they couldn't, and there was a lot of uprising. It's like they were, like, do you actually charge the backers an extra, do another round of funding just so they can get their game? That didn't go very well, right? I think and then what happened was the distributor just took possession of, because they weren't getting paid. They took possession of the game, and they just distributed them they served them through actual distributors. I think they sold the game out through distributors, so you could get it. So I have a copy that I bought from Amazon or something, knowing that I was never going to get my 60. So I bought it twice, kind of knowing I was never going to get my $60 back and some of that. And then this fiasco around Robinson Crusoe collector's edition there. Like it's funny, I'm still, even though I canceled that one probably more than a year ago, I'm still on the updates. And they didn't, I don't know. I think they shipped something, but it didn't sound like there was a lot. Again, people are happy, aren't really going to complain. You're not right. You always have to taint that a little bit.
Yeah.
Just the sheer number of kind of unhappy comments on there lead you to believe that thing was. I'm glad I bailed out when I could. So,
but you did find a thing or two that you may be backing or might be checking out. What are
but I'm
things?
still not. I have to keep getting the fix.
You're chasing the dopamine hit of,
and a lot of it now is 3D print stuff. There's a lot of STLs and things out there. One of the ones we saw was something called Game Lax, which is interesting. Like, it's not miniatures, but what it is behind me. Basically, you can 3D print inserts for the was it Carlax? Gotta get it right. for the shelving unit. So basically there, and you can, for each one of these 12 by 12 squares here, you can kind of all kinds of different things, whether that's a shelf, or different shelves, break it up, some drawers, card holder, kind of deck holders and shelves, things like that. So supposedly it'll be interesting to see. Again, it's not a huge layout in terms of money, and you have to put, because you're putting the effort and the money, and on your side you're doing the work on it, but that also gives you some customization options too around some of that stuff too. So interested to see that. I think that's, again, by the time this come out, it might have just ended, but my guess is you'll be able to late pledge or get in on it around that if you're interested. I'm probably not going to look to do like every single square, but I think there's some of the cool inserts for some of the smaller games, like up over here or something. It might be cool to like just help organize some of that stuff. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, if it doesn't quite work out, who knows? But a lot of people have these, so it's like, I'm sure that even if I don't use it, other people might want to use some of that stuff too. So yeah, you can Game LAX is kind of the link that'll get you there on I think it is on Kickstarter. So
nice.
And then coming soon, I've been following this one because it is kind of one of our games in our probably whatever Hall of Fame, whatever, is Kemet, Rise of the Gods. So they're doing kind of an expansion to the redone Kemet game, which was amazing, where they revisit that. And then it's, again, one of these where it's less about the expansion, and basically what they're doing is they are a really cool kind of all-in box that you put in like all the components and all the stuff. Kind of like, I mean, I love like Dwellings of Eldervale. They did a great job, right, of where the box contains everything.
Yeah.
Some of the cool things, like the big, again, I'll point way over here. I have like, get me right. What's the D&D game? The D&D game, the super old game, D&D.
Yep.
You're building the town. You got to help me. My brain is fried.
The Euro style
Waterdeep.
Lords of Waterdeep.
Lords of Waterdeep. Sorry, I'll edit that out. It'll sound a lot better. Waterdeep, Lords of Waterdeep, where I have that nice wood,
with the multiple
wood thing. Yeah. So that's what I'm more excited about. Is that's kind of what they're pushing. I think the expansion looks good and add some stuff, but really the kind of the collector's box that looks to come is what I'm kind of following to see how that's going to come out there. So, but excited that, again, we don't get Kemet to the table enough, but fun game.
No, because we need a regular board game night. We even like we should just do a once a month where
we don't play Frosthaven. How, I don't think.
Well, we keep our more regular Frosthaven, but then we have like a community board game night.
Yeah,
where we get other people to come and we play different games. We do a takeover at like the board game place in Brookfield.
Well, that's what I think we need to figure that out. Like we need to probably pick every other week or once a month weeknight, right? And then just go to, there's that one in Brookfield that might be interesting. That'd be kind of cool. There's a few other spaces around where we could do that. Yeah, I think that might be the way to.
And we advertise and we see who shows up. And
or you and I are downtown. There's some options down there too. So,
absolutely. All right. Well, let's real quick before we get into the library where everyone wants to go. Let's talk through any other interesting things, and I'll share one that is less about what I saw was cool, but just a tangential hobby. I used to, when I was in high school and early days in college, play disc golf. That was when it was just kind of starting to come into being a popular thing. So with the Gamers Ranch and our trip to BoDCon coming up, there's this amazing 18-hole disc golf course around the lake there on the ranch, which each hole has a YouTube drone video, Troy, on his website. I don't know if you've seen, if you go to the disc golf, you can see a drone shot of each of the holes of the disc golf course. But Landon and my brother Tom and I have been disc golfing. So we went to Valley View Park in New Berlin last weekend, or 2 weeks ago. We went to Esterbrook Park up on the Milwaukee River in Whitefish Bay, and we did a round of disc golf and then got some food and beverage at the Esterbrook Beer Garden. might try to do another park or two this weekend, see if we can get another round in. But it's been a lot of fun ish because it's very hard. Disc golf is not an easy thing to do, and lots of time spent looking in trees and bushes and tall grass for an errant throw. But
It's like real golf. Yeah.
It's fun to get outside. It's fun to be doing that again. Something to do with Landon and Tom, and we've been enjoying that. So, enjoying the 3 or 4 months of outdoor weather that we get.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe you're being generous, but and this year for some reason it's wet weather. We're getting warm, but it's wet.
Yeah. So. Yeah. But now I know you've got a few things.
Cool.
Here
of note. Sorry. Yeah, I will run through. So when I was in Door County, when I was in Door County for vacation, it was also free RPG day. So if you're on video, I'll describe it. I picked up a few. There was a lot of really good. It was hard to choose. I was trying not to be that guy. You've been there, the guy who takes everything, even though you're like, yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to take the ones that I was there. So X-Men preview for the multiverse role-playing game.
Very
I don't
cool.
know if this is
by
our
former
friend.
guest and
yep. Writers, Matt Forback and Marty Forback, who we are 2 guests. If you go back and look at that, also see Elise Teague on here. We have not met her, Matt Forback doing that one. I could have talked about this in Kickstarter too, but I picked up the Plague Bear. I think this is available online. Maybe not. This might be a little different.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Is this?
Yep. I think that's the starter, right? Yeah.
I think it's the starter. Yeah, I didn't double check to see if it's it's the same adventure that's in the available there. They did. I'm not worried a little bit, or maybe it's good. They did put a little bit of a pause on. They pushed the date back a little bit on Plague Bear releases on Kickstarter. They announced that recently. Seemed like all good reasons and not that it's going to hell. So hopefully we'll be hopeful there. And then our friends at Free League, I just saw Dragonbane.
Cool.
Which is trying to get the Sinking Tower is the expansion here. It's got dragons. It's an official tournament adventure for Dragonbane RPG, which is
Free League does some really good stuff. Yeah. It's one I'd like to get some of their games to the table.
And I hadn't even really full glossy heavyweight. You can't hold this. You guys can't hold it, but this feels for free. This was a very nice, a nice thing to give out. So again, interesting. Hopefully I can find some time to play with those a little bit. And again, hopefully if people are out there, and sometimes there was probably 30 different things that they had out there on shelves for us to grab, and cool stuff around there. So the other one, this one's going to hurt a little bit. I don't know if you can see this. So this is the making of the original Dungeons and Dragons. If you can, this book it's not like I'm holding it that close to camera. This book weighs 20 pounds. It
looks to be the size of the old Warhammer Fantasy Battle rule book.
It's monstrous. This was, again, part of the 50th anniversary D&D. I pre-ordered it. Super excited. I haven't spent a whole lot of time with it. Just came, was it this week or last week? But basically, set of rules, basically copies of the original D&D rules. Blackmore, right? Dave Arneson. A lot of original documents from Gary Gygax. So a lot of that, you're real interesting. Yeah, it'll be fun to just spend some time with this.
Yeah.
And kind of, I was White Box was a little bit before my time, but just cool to really kind of see some of that stuff. I remember, I was in a lot of, saw Dave Arneson a couple times talk about kind of the early days and about Blackmore and things like that. So it'd be cool to kind of see some of that stuff. So just got that, an original, a little D&D. Look at, there's your adventure. Like, there's not all that crazy stuff like on our sheet now, Ty. Why do you make us have all that stuff? This is simple. Like, we just
seems very streamlined and very efficient use of space.
Yeah, Just a one pager.
Granted, the calculations to figure out if you hit something were slightly more complex.
THACO, come on, everyone
Yeah.
had, right? That's when men were men, when they could calculate THACO, right? That's
yeah.
And women were women. That was
And dungeons were on graph paper. Yeah.
Right, dungeons on graph paper. Yeah, traps actually killed you. All that fun stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Cool. A shout out. Again, I've mentioned her before. I'll just shout her out again. Local artist Lindsay Burkar. I've been following her on Patreon. Just check her out. She does D&D character commission stuff, really cool. She's got some of her own original art out there. There's there's still, I have to figure out how I'm going to buy whatever she calls it. I want to give the name. I want to say it's the bear, but that's not. Be Brave, which is a picture of this giant bear and this warrior person, maybe a woman, maybe it's somebody with long hair. You have their back, so you don't know there, but just really good. And and again, if Lindsay, you gotta get a lot of really good. She shares a lot of her story and on some of the things she's gone through that like inspired some of the artwork there too. And she's also pretty transparent around what it's like to try and be an artist in now day and age too, around some of that. And just want to shout her out, give her some support. If there's something you see there, feel free to buy something and throw there into. And she is, I believe, she's Milwaukee. I think we ran into her at Gamehole. Trying to think what it was. I think it was Gamehole. Yeah. Around that too. So
very cool.
All right. And then last but not least, right here, the 500th White Dwarf. If you can get the cool,
I get the subscription. Brindle right there.
Brindle. Yep. Yes, and I know.
Is this the last one they're actually? Is this the last one they're printing before they put it behind the paywall?
501 is actually right over there because I won't complain too much. Like my subscription is, I don't know if it's me or not. It does not seem like it's monthly, but it does not seem that there's 4 weeks between my issues. It's like it feels like I got this one, and then like a week later I got 501, and now it'll be like.
Is it up to? Is it like a $9 magazine or $10 magazine?
I have no idea. Yeah, it's like $9 or $10, I think, because I think it's like $90 for this. I'm probably underselling.
Do you remember when a White Dwarf used to run you $3?
Yes, and that's the callback, because in some ways, like, used to be Dragon Magazine, right? I don't know if you were that, but I was I had a few issues of Dragon and Dungeon. I also had a few issues of. Yeah. Oh, see, I was a loyal Dragon subscriber since probably the 1980, 80, whatever. Because in some ways that was my lifeline to the in Door County kind of way. We had no game store, whatever. Like, it was my lifeline to the hobby for years and years and years. And then kind of by late 80s, when I got into Warhammer and Games Workshop stuff, White Dwarf was kind of that connection too. And even for the years when I was out of the hobby, I still always subscribed to White Dwarf, and that was a way to that. And when in this issue, basically there's the poster they give you right here, as I pointed behind me, that has all 500 of the covers on there. And then there's a lot. It's a super thick issue. But one of the things is they go through, I don't know what it is. It's probably a 10-page article. They basically walk through not every single one, but kind of a lot of the highlights of the different covers over the years, the different stages, that kind of, as it's gone through different morphs, they kind of even, acknowledge, if anyone remembers when White Dwarf went to, they kind of hand wave over the 500 around when they had weekly, because there was a time when White Dwarf went to like a weekly subscription or weekly release model where it was, I don't know, a little just like I mean, there were still articles and things like that, but it was also very much a catalog that's there too. But just really enjoyed walking through the different and going back and not realizing that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff you guys can't see over there. Maybe I'll throw it. I have the Land Raider poster that came in a White Dwarf, and I didn't realize like that's 20 years old. Like that came out in like 2004 until I went through that article and like, oh yeah. And they showed it like, hey, and there's the cool thing in this issue around that. So again, just really enjoyed kind of that walk through as again on our 80th, as we go through our 80th episode, to go through 500. And I was not there at 1, but they were still in double digits, I think, when I really started getting White Dwarf and following it. So it's just been like Dragon. I kind of miss, I mean, I really miss, Dragon was that way too for years and years and years, right? And it was kind of sad when that kind of turned into electronic and whatever, now it's kind of D&D Beyond or whatever. But it's not the same as when you can have the magazine that you sit down with around some of that stuff too. So
that's now I feel a little bad for trolling you about that kind of a paywall too.
Well, I did get rid of so part of it, I mean, I do not have for years I had all the back issues, which sat and take up space. But Warhammer Plus does have Warhammer Archive, which has all the stuff electronic, and that really made me feel like I don't really need to have these things sit on my shelf, because in reality, I'd rarely go back. The only time I go back to look at them is when I thought about ever throwing them away, right? Was like, oh, I can't throw these away, right? That you're like, I have not looked at this in 5 years, but now that I'm looking at it, I can't throw it away. So, but yeah, Warhammer Plus, the Warhammer Archive did allow me to let go of those issues, knowing that if I really want something, you can go back and they have them electronically.
All right, let's go to the library. One thing I have been doing, Troy, is reading a lot and listening to a lot of books. So I think last time I touched on David Eddings, and I started the Belgariad Volume 1. So it's a big, almost graphic novel-sized paperback, but thick, book that condenses all 3 of the first 3 novels of the Belgariad into one book. But I read each of those 3, and I finished it. Now I have to go get Volume 2, which is the 4th and 5th book. But the first 3 are like Pawn of Prophecy, something Magician's Gambit, and something else like Queen of Sorcery or something like that. But read those, really kind of enjoyed the old school epic fantasy that Eddings is known for. Enjoying the story, enjoying the characters. It was one I'd never read, so I just kind of enjoyed that. I read those. Then because Bryce has spoken so highly of it, I had tried Volume 1 of He Who Fights with Monsters. So I thought it was okay. So then I'm like, maybe it gets better. And I got the second one. And it was really kind of just story moves forward a little bit, but it started to feel samey. I was like, oh, it's all right. I don't know if I'll go back to the well and keep going, because I think there's like 10 or 11 of them. And I don't think I can do that. But I did listen to it. It wasn't terrible. And then I also on Audible. So every so often I hear of Michael J. Sullivan, and he self-published these books, and then they became like big hits, and they're highly rated on Goodreads, and they're always see them recommended on Audible for me. So it's the Rairia Revelations books 1 and 2. A Theft of Swords is the first one, and it's about 2 rogues that are commissioned to steal a sword that was supposed to be used in a duel, but then they get caught up in this kind of Game of Thrones-esque politics of kidnapping and assassinations, and it was pretty good. So I finished book 1, and book 2 I've started. And there's some magic, there's some politics, there's some combat. Good, not great, but enjoyable. I think maybe it was overhyped a little bit. I don't know if you've heard of Rairia ever, or Michael J. Sullivan. But
no, the name's a little bit familiar, but yeah, not.
And then I started reading a book because I read Black Tongue Thief by Chris Buhlman, and I thought it was fantastic. So I'm like, I'm going to find some of his other stuff. And this one kept showing up in kind of post-apocalyptic gothic horror. It's called Between Two Fires. and it takes place in France in the 1300s, in the time of like a horrific plague. And there's this aging knight, former knight, who's now a bandit, who finds this young girl who has this. She said that an angel has talked to her and told her she needs to do this, and he needs to come with her, and has this kind of prophetic like vision. But it's against the backdrop of this horrific plague. So you have all the distrust of who has the plague and people dying. There's this comet making its way across the sky that is potentially going to be devils on earth, maybe zombies. You don't know what is about to happen, but something horrific. And the book just ratchets up the tension as you're in this kind of fever dream hellscape of plague, middle-age France. And it's told from the perspective of this warrior, this knight traveling with this little girl. They meet a priest who can't defend himself at all and is kind of, effeminate in a way. And it's so tense and it's so good. And what I can't figure out is, I don't know how I stumbled upon Christopher Buehlman, but I never hear about him. I never see him, but honest to goodness, I'm absolutely loving his books, and he is a phenomenal writer. And the more people I see that start reading his stuff, or I see him starting to be talked about, and I think he is perhaps, and maybe he's world renowned and everybody knows him, and I'm just living in a sheltered world. But I honest to God hadn't heard of him before I read Black Tongue Thief, and he's just so good. I don't understand how he's not more well known, and talked about and optioned for like TV shows and movie. It's just, these two books have been slam dunks. I'm tearing through the pages. And the prequel to Black Tongue Thief, The Daughter's War, just released, so I'm going to tackle that one next. But it tells the story of one of the other characters in Black Tongue Thief before Black Tongue Thief, but it's the second book in the series.
Cool. Yeah, I might have to bump that up on my my list here, to peek at it somewhere. So.
And he writes really good horror novels too. Like there's a book that is really highly rated called Those Across the River, which is supposed to be really good and scary. And I don't usually read that genre, but I'm tempted to because of how I'm enjoying his other stuff. So,
although I can, again, I don't very rarely, but in my youth or a little more, I can read horror easier than I can't watch. I'm terrible. I don't like horror movies. Like I cannot deal with that, but I can read kind of, and not, I like, again, The Shining, like some Stephen King stuff a little bit, like I've read in the past, and I can get through that. I don't know why, because, and sometimes that's worse because your mind is sometimes worse than a movie, but I think you can flip faster too. You don't have to I can be like my daughter and just fast forward through the bad parts. Maybe that's what I should do.
And film, I did go to the movies. Nicole and I haven't been to the theater in a while, but I really wanted to see The Bike Riders. So it's Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, Julie Comer. It's about a outlaw motorcycle club that starts in Chicago in the 60s. It's fictional, but it's based on a book that a photographer made around that time, where he would take pictures and interview people from the club. And the story's told from interviews with a woman who married one of the club members. And it started as like a riding club, and then it became this kind of biker gang. And as they grew, and it kind of morphs, and then they're into, the guys that started it are kind of uncomfortable with the turn that it took in the 70s. And the club is the Vandals, but possibly maybe it's today's Outlaws, right? Like it's unclear, but it references Chicago and neighborhoods, and then the chapter in Milwaukee, and it's a Midwest. And like it kind of had this feel of like what Easy Rider was when it came out for the Hells Angels and motorcycles back then. It's almost like revisiting that classic kind of era before it was what it is now. And Tom Hardy's fantastic in it. Austin Butler's really great. And then we also watched Masters of the Air with Austin Butler. That's the connection there. which is the Spielberg World War II bomber squad, the
Oh,
Bloody
okay.
Hundredth
Yep.
out of England. Apple TV, like better than Band of Brothers, better than the Pacific in my book. It was
All right.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
I watched it by myself over the course of a week, and then Landon and Nicole watched it with me, and we watched it over another week. So I watched all 9 episodes twice in like short order, and it is
that's a tall order there. You're putting it ahead, like Band of Brothers. I haven't seen all. I didn't watch all the Pacific, but Band of Brothers is one of my favorite. And yeah,
it tells a story that I think has been untold, like in a way that's just incredible with modern cinematography and editing, but it captures the feel of World War II, like the Army Air Force, right? It's great. The German flak, like the tension in the cockpit as shrapnel is shredding through the little bubble like of the machine gunner. It's crazy how intense the show is. I had to fast forward through a couple scenes for Landon, but mostly, not obviously some violence and stuff, but you get everything from the combat missions over Germany to what would happen when a plane would go down and they were behind enemy lines, and then some of the Stalag, like the German prison camps for the U.S. airmen, and just really, really great show. So
cool. I will take you back to the bike riders. So my cousin, my dad was the youngest in his family, so all my cousins on his side were much, much older. So my cousin was in the Milwaukee Outlaws, knew a lot of him and his buddies. Their wedding, when he got married, originally we were at the babysitter, so I would have been under 10 probably, so I would have been like Sarah and Landon's age, and but they're at this wedding. My parents were at this wedding, which had motorcycles everywhere, all kinds of different whatever. And my parents had so much fun. They came back to Richfield to pick us up and take us. They were like, "No, you don't need to stay at babysitter. We're taking you back to this wedding so you can hang out with all these the family and bikers and whatever." And interesting. I mean, interesting to kind of check it out, because again, I had that view, but all the people that I knew for him were actually, and even as they got older, like a lot of his friends were still people that he knew from that gang, and his wife, and that neither of them are living anymore. But they were all amazing people. All really, as you talk, right? Again, who know? I'm sure they had some wild times back in the 70s, but they all ended up very, very interesting people. So that's my connection to the Milwaukee Outlaws. So
very cool. All right, what have you been?
All right. Yeah, mine will not be maybe as interesting. I dove into, as you talked about, kind of the He Who Fights. You guys are way ahead of me, but I picked up Dungeon Crawler Carl 3, going down that path. I think you guys have talked a little bit about that. There's a certain theme with all of that book that you knew. Again, enjoying it. Again, I think I've had enough time that coming back, it's one of those, I'm just listening, when you're mowing the lawn. It was
they're entertaining, and the narrator is so good. Like I definitely couldn't have done that series reading it. Like
so it's a good entertain. And then I was looking for a little bit of a bridge the gap, because I have the next Malazan book sitting there waiting for me, but I know when I dive into that, it's going to be a month of intensity and whatever, and I just didn't feel quite that yet, and so I'm like, I'm gonna go a little bit lighthearted.
The drive, you could get a quarter of the way there, forcing John to listen to it on the drive to St. Louis.
Maybe get him. Well, I promise I don't want to start him on book 4. Like,
well, you could.
I could. That's actually a good. I mean, but it feels like it'll be a good break, because it felt like 1 through 3 was a definite arc.
Yeah.
And there's a storyline. I know. I mean, just from the title, I can
guess. The Chain of
House of Chains.
House of Chains. Yeah.
So I can guess where that is picking up, because there is a thread that gets left over from the first 3 around that. But they are. I mean, I think he does a pretty good. Each book actually has a pretty good arc of itself within the larger art. Again, that's why you guys have turned me on you and around that, like the Malazan whole universe there is and world is pretty crazy. So so that one's waiting in the wings for me. I had found out as I was gonna look at, we've talked about the Horus Heresy and the Siege of Terra books and all that, and I owe our kind of readers kind of a final wrap up on the Basement of Death website, and I started to kind of go that, and I realized not that I missed a book, but if you are familiar, there was the 10 12 books, 10 books that turned into 12 of the original series. Then Graham McNeil there were two kind of shorter novellas that Graham McNeil, because he was not part of BoD Library anymore, but had some characters that he had written over the years. So Furia Magnus is a novella in there, and Sons of Selenar is another one, and those wrap up certain things. What I found I had not caught is Garo, Knight of the Gray, which is James Swallow novella that kind of wraps up the arc of Garo, who, if you go back from Flight of the Einstein, book 4, the Death Guard who basically didn't turn and grabbed the Einstein and headed for Terra to warn the Imperium that that Horus had turned. And there's a whole set of books that James Swallow that kind of follows Garo through that. He basically is again Knight of the Gray. If you think there's things that it's kind of the start of some of the Grey Knights and things like that are around that. So just caught up on that. So I got in and I'm like, oh wait, let me just catch up on this. So I feel like I have a complete picture in that. Enjoyed that. I have not read every single Garo book through the path, but where he starts, you kind of know where the story is there. So I enjoyed that. Gave some nice closure on that one there. So again, I still owe the crew of that. I've been thinking about that. So look for, at some point, I will put up a post around my wrap up for the Horus Heresy books and the Siege of Terra. My review-ish of the non-spoilery, probably, of the Siege of Terra, or slightly spoiler. And then my highlight, I'm going to call out this one. Want to thank, I started this in, I think it was May, and that was The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This was she did this for a book report at the end of school and kind of May. And so she had started reading it. I was like, all right, let me kind of pick it up and read it with her. Started it. And then I jumped and grabbed the audio. Grabbed the audiobook, and I actually went, and then I think I finished it up in mid-June. Love that book. It's a YT, it's a young adult kind of whatever. It gives me, I don't want to, it gives me a little bit of a Neil Gaiman feel, but not style, like a little different in style, but just in that young adult, very dark, like that Sherry had kind of, I think, read one of the first chapters on some of that, and she's like, this is a kid's book. I'm like, yeah, leaving babies out in the woods as sacrifice, sure, that's a kid's book, right?
Yeah, they need to learn those lessons too. Yeah,
right.
Appease the old gods. Yeah.
Right. So again, it's a little bit of again, I'll recommend it. I think I enjoyed it as an adult. There's a lot of a good emotion. Characters are fun, and a little bit of layers to it, right? Like she does a good. There's some things that are there. Just a lot of fun. I think it won the Newbery or something like that. That's what else thing gave me like, oh, let me like again, just like Graveyard Book did for Gaiman. So I'm like, oh, somebody must think this is pretty good. And yeah, just really enjoyed it. And it was fun to read a book with Sarah and talk about kind of talk about that kind of stuff too. So again, even though I recommend to your kids if they can handle that or whatever, and even adults, if you're looking kind of a fun fantasy, it's an interesting characters and stuff like around there. So that's really my highlight. It'll be interesting to see, because that might be one of my favorite books of the year. Was really good. And so I'm a little tempted. I'm kind of like you, Ty. I'm kind of look at some other Kelly Barnhill books and see, I was like, do I want to do that? Are going to be, there always worries they're not as good, right? That you kind of get in and that you're kind of like, no, this was the top one, and that everything else there's a couple other ones that seem highly recommended. So the idea would be maybe Sarah and I both pick it up and kind of read it together for some of that stuff too. So that's about it for my and I haven't watched anything that I can that's worthwhile. Wrexham, I kind of got back into finished I've been watching more fun. Top Chef Milwaukee came to an end. That was kind of fun.
I haven't watched the finale episode yet. The last two I haven't watched.
Yeah, I won't give any spoilers. They're not in Milwaukee anymore, so it wasn't quite as exciting. But it was good to see that. I mean, you're kind of invested with.
It was so funny every time seeing them get into the cars out front of the residence in the little circle there, right by the office, and like the views of Chase Tower and the river, and
Although I don't know, like I don't follow anybody on social media or any like that, but they had to hate that Whole Foods. Like every other Whole Foods I go to around anywhere is amazing. The one people who don't know, the one in Milwaukee, it's not a brand new building, it's a retrofit. They stuck a Whole Foods into an existing building. It's weird, like you park in the ground, there's an escalator to go up. It's kind of mangled around. There's certain aisles that have a post, right? It's not as well, right? I mean, I went to go look for some stuff. I'm like, oh, I'll stop there on because I was heading home and I'm like, how come they don't have half the stuff? If I go to the one we have another one in a little west of downtown Milwaukee. And again, I've been in one in Chicago or whatever. And I was used to those because I'd only been in those. I hadn't been in the downtown one for years. Only when I was watching it on the TV show and going, I wonder how much they hate this store, because just to navigate it is always kind of a thing. So I don't know. Sorry, it's a big tangent on how bad our Whole Foods is. Again, Whole Foods like it, but that store itself is kind of.
It was cool though when they went to the fish market at at the public market and some of that stuff. So
I was just there for lunch on Monday, so it was good. So doing that, enjoying again. So that's what I've been doing. Top Chef. Welcome to Wrexham is back too. So those are kind of the half hour that I watch TV every once in a while. So
nice. All right. Well, we're going to take a real quick break, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to hit Troy with some deep reflection on the BoD and the state of the BoD, and some discussion about community. So now that we don't have others where it's more of a round table, I can just sit across from Troy and have this open discussion. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and hit our main topic. And we're back for the main topic. I'm going to kind of hit Troy with some questions, probably share my opinions, but talk a little bit about the Basement of Death, the community, the location, the entity that the BoD has become. And I lead in with 10 plus years of BoD. It's probably closer to 14, 15 years. I don't know that we have an official date of the start of our gaming together. Not that the BoD starts with when we started gaming, but roughly that community of guys playing 40K years ago. And where we've come. So I thought episode 80 was a good time to kind of lean in. I knew it was just going to be you and I and talk about this. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the Basement of Death as a community. And ultimately, what does it mean to cultivate a community, and specifically the community that's been built kind of around the Basement of Death and the gaming, the people, so like I want to get inside Troy's brain, and what does it mean to you to cultivate this community?
Well, I would say, first of all, I mean, I'm humbled by that, right? By the fact that it's become what it, right? That again, it's been very organic, right? It's nothing that we went out to do. It was the idea of here's a bunch of guys that are kind of have this thing in common around. Originally it was 40K, right? Like, hey, it's we all were definitely in 40K, and then again people were like, hey, we all have kind of similar interests around the hobby and other things like that, and it kind of grew from there. Again, kind of and unintentionally on some of that, and a lot of it Ty will give you your as the kind of the face of the BoD and that, and the your high charisma stat. Right. I think as we in you're kind of the sticky part in some ways, right? I don't know. I mean, you can as we kind of would reach out um and go to different events and things like that and meet more people, and you were always the first one to like talk to bring people in, and that I'm I'm a little more introverted. I'm like there are a few interactions as we kind of brought people in there, but a lot of times it was you reaching out and you kind of talking about this or that, and then again we never like it was never like, hey, do you want to come join our thing? It was kind of like, hey, you're cool, we like hanging
Let's
out with
hang out.
you, let's
Yeah.
hang out. And then we kind of would, like the Borg, we would kind of just assimilate different people from from different areas, whether that was Brian Nairo, right, and some of the and as we met Will through Anvil 8 and things
Yeah.
like that. And it was funny, Terrace and I were talking again about, it was at Adepticon, we played in a combat patrol against each other, right, and just kind of hit it off again, similar things as and over the 10 years, right, it's interesting, like, hey, we're very much into the same things, same kind of outlook on that kind of stuff. And again, and we've created again, just very organically, not super intentionally, like just said, hey, and a lot of the stuff we're doing with with Terrace was the same. Like we just said, hey, how do we get to spend more time together? How can we do something together to do some of that stuff? And we've done that with different people. And again, some of the people, and then even the podcast, right, has been a fairly like, hey, we've always kind of said, for as much as people are like, why why do you only put out every once in a month or something like that, is we always like, it needed to be fun, we wanted to do that, we didn't want it to really ever become a job. We never really looked for like, hey, is it going to be monetized? But and again, do we get 10,000 downloads? No, but it was never our intention. Our intention was just to continue to spread the community, right? Spread the community in an organic way. Again, not that we're in the way that we kind of do it. And through that way, we've met, again, whether it's Josh and other people, even, Dan Bears, right? As he's had like a very popular, their podcast, very popular. And, he was the one who's like, hey, I was inspired by you, you guys to kind of do that. And that's been kind of flattering. So yeah, I don't know, Ty, if I answered your kind of your question.
Yeah.
I think I get, and in some way, I mean, and I do even get a little bit, especially like Adepticons and things like that. I do get emotional when we're a lot of us, and we're never like all, but where there's a large group of us all together, and you just kind of step back a little bit and you look at the wide range of people from sometimes all around the country and whatever, and we're all together and we're hanging out, and you're just like, and you try and think about the threads that brought us all together around some of that. And it's it's humbling and it's cool. It's super cool, right? It's like over the last, like you said, 14 years, met some of my people I call my best friends, and have been there for even non-gaming and other stuff like that, which has been cool. Been to your wedding, right, and things like that. So it's awesome.
And you kind of hit the nail on the head with the organic growth, like that's the thing that I think I've really focused on. Is it's never been a recruiting drive. It's never been we're going to advertise an event, see who shows up, like a meetup, or like, it's just,
it
just kind of happens. And it happens because we keep applying the passion in the right places, but certainly, yeah, it has been, it's crazy for me. I don't know what it is, but I've been doing this like nostalgia thing where I'm thinking that maybe it's aging, right? Like
Yeah.
you look at how time flies, and it's like, it's crazy to me that it's probably been 14 years. That was probably around
Yep.
2010,
Yep.
if
Yeah, that's
not 09. Like,
oh no, yeah. I think as we've gone back and kind of like traced, basically I built this space in 2009 as I was
yeah,
around that, and it ended up being shortly after that that we again through kind of chance that
mhm.
we ended up meeting up with
Thanks to
you
Kohl's
and Josh.
Corporate,
Yeah,
really.
thanks to Kohl's Corporate, right? It
Yeah,
was kind of that we ended up kind of meeting up, and that was again in that end of 2009 2010
yeah.
kind of thing, and it's just spiraled off from there.
It certainly has. And do you ever revisit that with Sherry about when she called it the basement of death?
Oh,
Like,
well, calling back to again my niece's husband Matt, we just retold the story to him because he was going through the thing, and Sherry was down there with me, and so she got her side and our side on some of that too. So yeah, it was. I think she still is. I don't know, regrets in some way.
uh, so I think, first to give a definition, and a lot of this comes from third space brewing, but the concept of a third space, the the idea that there's these liminal places where you're outside of your work, you're outside of your family, you're outside, your commitments, that kind of exist as places between the otherness, right?
Yeah,
And I probably didn't do justice to the definition of a third space, but outside of home, outside of work,
work, right?
another location or state of being. I think there's also
Yeah,
kind of this concept. Um, so I think, at least for myself, and not to put words in your mouth, but I'll let you expound upon it, that the BOD as a thing, right, outside of your
Mm.
basement, outside of the space, has become a third space, right? It's our connection to gaming. It's the place where we post whatever into Discord. It's the podcast. It's all of these kind of tangential activities that are the basement of death, and Playin and Slayin being one of them.
yeah.
Um, and I'm gonna try not to get too emotional, so I'm gonna start by asking you, how important is it to have that BOD third space, like, for you personally?
Um, that's a great, like, it's huge. I mean, in some ways, it's huge. It is the other, and you, because I always want to be careful because it's not like you don't want to say it's an identity, but in some ways
Hmm.
it is, right? And I just try to keep it in the right frame of mind because in the end, like that's where you get into trouble is when you try and put too much into an identity in that. Um, but it is kind of what is the other thing we do, and it's funny how it is for me. I don't, for a long time it didn't bleed in as much to other places, but it's just funny now how a lot of people at work know that of the basement of death. They know of the podcast, right? Um and so it it is kind of which has allowed it to even grow more. And then as we've done things in some ways, and as our entity of what we do when we kind of just go to conventions and run things um and do that it just creates that that group of that, and we're always like, and again, and I kind of go back, right? I am always kind of humbled and enjoy when I again where I just see people, the are very, and I don't know how we'll ever redo. I took off my my sweatshirt, our blue BOD sweatshirts, right?
Yeah.
When people show up from different, that are in the group that are at different events and are wearing the merch and things like that, and even out, like, it's funny, like, I mean, I know, like, our buddy Josh, who will send us pictures of him and his with his sweatshirt on out in Arizona, goofing around. My brother-in-law, who doesn't really game a lot, but when we're in Door County, he has one, and he's always sporting it, especially when we're around on some of that stuff too. So yeah, it's an interesting, and then, like this space where the actual physical space, like here too, right? Like this is my, my kind of, den or whatever, where I, kind of after I get done with the day, this is where I'm most comfortable. Like I'm going to come down, and sometimes I don't get a whole lot accomplished, but just being in the
Just
space,
surrounded
being
by
with the stuff, right? It's like, yeah, that's, and again, and even my office upstairs where I'm working is has a lot of is the outskirts of a lot of the RPG stuff and, and things that I don't want to have in a basement or up around there and surrounded by. So
yes, all those things.
thanks.
And like, I think when I try to frame it to like, it's so not that I need an escape from family or from other things I do, but like it offers this opportunity to truly feel like I'm myself and I'm around people
Mhm.
that like I don't have to I don't have to pretend, right?
Yep.
Ever. Like, I think a lot of times as a society, we have an at work mask, right? We
Yep.
have although your company says bring your whole self to work, most people don't bring their whole
There's
self
still a
to work.
line. There's still a line. Yep.
There's a line. And as fathers and husbands, we also have commitments and things, that we can't always let loose and act like we're 14, with our family. Like, but for me, it's so important to have that third space to just kind of be and like,
Mhm.
um, it's just a comfort thing, right? Like,
Yep.
so when I think about like getting together for the weekenders or BodCon, like, um, without that like outlet, it's just tough to think about how, there's that concept of
Yep.
masking, right? And it's
Right.
exhausting. And eventually you're just like, you freak out because you're so tired of doing that thing. But it gives that opportunity to just kind of put that aside. So
Yeah. No, and again, I don't want to get too deep, but you hear a lot of things about kind of just mental health, and especially men, and not a lot of men maybe not having that close group of friends
yeah.
that they can just hang out with and just be okay with and do that. And again, it's again, we're lucky in that we've kind of created some of that group and have that like you said, that outlet. That again, nothing against, you love your family, love your
Yep.
whatever, and there's work relationships that are
Yeah. Oh
sometimes
yeah.
fulfilling too, but it's different. It's like you said, it's different, and it's a way that we can, yeah, you can just in an area, and even in the past too is a little bit around. And I don't know if you had this with some of the baseball. I mean, I played competitive volleyball for 20 years also, and that for me that was another space that I did it.
Yeah.
But it's not, I mean, it's different. Like you're kind of sweating and bleeding with those guys and doing that, but it's not the same as getting to sit around a gaming table for 3 hours
Yeah.
and you kind of shoot the shit and kind of talk like that. I mean, I have some friends that I played volleyball with that I still hang out with, but it's not quite the same as what we have with where you're the intimacy you kind of have with
Yeah.
RPGs, and right, it's interesting. So
Yeah, and I mean, you see it, there's that regulars at a bar, right?
yep.
The bar has the same people in there the weeknights and the same crowd. And I think, although perhaps more destructive, people like that feeling of like
Yeah.
belonging, right? When you walk in the door, everybody's going to know you, everybody's going to, say hi to you.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I think as humans we seek out, right?
Yep.
Like um we're I forget the term, but it's that whole like it's not tribalism, but it's that idea of a person by themselves won't live, the full healthy life
Yep.
as somebody surrounded by people.
Yep.
All right, I made it through that. So now we're gonna do a little future casting, a little prophecy. Where does the BoD go? What else does it become, or is it where you want it to be? Like, is there more? Is there growth? Is there transformation? Or you just steady state, we let it be organic, and kind of like a mold, we just let it kind of grow and assimilate. Where are you at on that concept?
What's cool is that as we've, again, in our own way, where we've been very, I guess, humble and organic about what we did, is how that has created opportunities, right? I'm super excited for how we've, again, I'll Terrace, we'll in the future, we will talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing. We're going to do even more with him and Geek Nation at Adepticon this year. We'll save the stuff for him to announce, but that's super exciting around that. Again, just how we're able to take things to a little bit of a different level there. Been enjoyed the relationship we've had with Carl Tuttle and Josh and those guys from Independent Characters and Adon and things like that. Again, that we've just through gaming got to know better, just created more opportunities, a little bit more exposure, right, around some of that. Again, the guys at Adepticon, Matt and Hank, can't help them around some of that stuff there. I don't want to leave out, again, we talked a little bit about people that we just kind of organically pulled in. Raph Cordero, amazing, right? Amazing person. Love him to death. It's been great how we pulled him into our group, how his connections with Goonhammer, and he is like, Ty, as much as you're extroverted, Raph is another level, right, around all the connections he has. And again, the support and stuff that he's given to us and ability and opportunities he's kind of helped us there. So it's exciting, right? And that said, it's like we're still like, I think, not like rushing out to do those, but looking at which of those opportunities make sense, which of them are kind of in our comfort zone, which of them don't. Again, kind of that still, I like our mantra is we still want it to be fun, right? We're not trying to build some kind of a thing or a network or monetize anything. So
hold on. The link for the Patreon, the affiliate links, if you want to start your own BoD chapter, all are at the bottom of the No, I can't.
We'll work the franchise. We'll work the franchise model.
Yep. For one low installment of $25,000, you too can have a Basement of Death chapter in your local community.
So I think that at the end, and so I think it's, what's cool is, right, I think there's some opportunities coming for us to continue to do that. You and I have been talking about how to, I think we enjoy this, right? We enjoy this podcasting part of it. And is there a way that we can spin out some other things that we enjoy that we think are, again, that we enjoy, that we think other people will also enjoy? And we're trying to figure that out, again, in our way and in the right time and things like that. So they all require some energy and some of that. So how do you not split yourself too much? So that's cool. And then the last thing here is, it's been a little bit of the community is the interesting way. Like you said, we've been doing this for 14 years. It's kind of cool to see the next generation of things. I mean, I like Marlon, and it's like, and Jonah, as we've seen his kids grow up as we've been through it. Eric, right, is some of that we haven't seen his as much, but Jonah still, we see him a lot around there. Again, Landon, Sarah now poke their head around some of that. Ashton, John's oldest, right, has done that, and his daughters even kind of poke their head around some of that. It's interesting, is what does the second generation of of the BoD kind of look like, and will they want to do our gaming, or will they be video gamers or thing of that? I mean, there's still we know there might be some Space Hulk in there. So
the miniature Space Hulk sits by his computer desk. He has it out on display.
That's good. Now you gotta to paint it with like tweezers, though. It's like or dip. I think you can just dip those. That might be the thing.
Yeah. Very cool. So I thought episode 80 was good for that little peak. Not episode 100, but I didn't want to wait, because that's 3 years off at the current rate of production.
At the rate we do it, no, it was good. It was good. We don't think about it too often. It like I said, it tends to be we're at a convention or Adepticon or sometimes a game hole or something, or we've had some of our bigger game nights and we get a large percentage of at least some of the local gang to show up. It always just kind of makes me reflect too then, like, wow, where did these all where'd all these people, and even their Discord, like, and if you don't think too hard, like, you even go in our Discord every day and you just think about these people that I want to say we take for granted, but we enjoy that we get to kind of chat with them every other day or something like that, and wherever they are in the world, and remember that 14 years ago we had no idea who they were. So
yeah, absolutely. Speaking of those opportunities, I'm going to talk about conventions because that's where we get a chance to see and what's coming up, and then we'll bring the show home. Right around the corner, about just over a week away, 10 of our BoD members, family and friends, will be descending on the Gamers Ranch in the middle of Missouri to spend 3 nights, the better part of those 3.5 days, playing games, hanging out, and kind of an eclectic cross section of friends and gamers and family.
Yeah.
So smaller crowd than obviously we see other places, but it'll be great all the same. At BoDCon, as we're affectionately calling our gaming weekend here in the middle of July. Couple short weeks after that, I know, Troy, you already mentioned you and Sarah are likely headed to Gen Con in Indianapolis, Indiana, for 4 days or 3 days or 2 days of fun and Pokemon extravaganza.
Yeah.
Visit with Danner and Elena, I'm sure, and see some of our old and dear friends there. In the fall, then we hit Gamehole Con. Hopefully, continues to get bigger and better. We've got some Holy events, Holy Havoc, Holy Wars coming up, Dragonfall, all of those fun things in the fall. But they're going to be here in a hurry. What's crazy is it's July, and the year is already half over, which is wild. And when you live your year 2 weeks at a time in sprints and quarters, the start of Q3 is wild to me that we are already there. So, and then obviously around the corner, but never out of sight, never out of mind, Adepticon Milwaukee 2025. The first time you'll see 3 huge Space Hulk games running at the same time in the extra space of the Baird Center in Milwaukee. We might be using mirrors to get that to actually look like there's 3 games, but no, that will be great. Very excited about what's to come there. More in the future, but it's a great chance for us to show Milwaukee as a host city for an ever-growing convention. So,
yeah, pretty crazy. I know we didn't talk a little bit about, because the hotel went live this week. Pretty
4
crazy
minutes.
that they sold out even all the additional hotel space that they had in the blocks here in Milwaukee. Again, everybody's always, when you sell out, right, some people's going to come up short, but the general, it seemed like it was much smoother, and people were able to get room. Most people were able to get some rooms or things like that. And even then, if they didn't get in the blocks, there's a lot of options still around, very much within walking distance, very much kind of across the box. So again, interesting to see as Adepticon Milwaukee kind of comes to shape. I think first year there may still be a few growing pains as people kind of figure this stuff out, but we will again, we're already have some eyes on that, looking ahead, and like all this other stuff. And we will probably look to see what we can do to make sure we give our Adepticon prep will probably be a little bit more in depth, and we'll maybe do a few shows on giving some primers for people on how they can navigate Milwaukee and what we know of the Baird Center and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I've already, started planting seeds of if anyone needs advice or help in the Milwaukee area. So like I'm in a Discord of some AOS folks that I know, and I posted there. I said, hey, if you got any questions, I'm a local guy, let me know. But that goes certainly for any listeners, anyone that catches this, if you do have any questions about Milwaukee, where to stay, where to eat, where to, what to check out, so on and so forth. We all are longtime residents, work downtown, live around the area. So certainly shoot us questions on what is it, Twitter X, I don't know what it is these days, at Playin and Slayin Show, basementofdeath.com, all of our emails, names at basementofdeath.com. If you find us somewhere else like Instagram or YouTube comments or whatever it is, hit us up, ask us questions. We're always willing to share about Milwaukee and the greater gaming community here, or the show. Ideas, thoughts, feedback. I'll read your YouTube comments about 8 weeks after you post them. But I will likely check them out at some point. But always, leave a review, helps other people find it, feeds the algorithm, subscribe to YouTube, all those things. Share with a friend. If you're at a graduation party and your niece's husband happens to be a gamer, tell them that Playin and Slayin and check it out and listen. And Matt, thanks for being a new listener when you get here. So if you stuck around this long, though, you know the drill, everyone. Keep the dice rolling, the drinks on ice, and no matter what, keep playing and slaying.